Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. You know what I would do if I was in charge? Have you heard people talk like this? If I was king for a day, here's what I would do. If I was the president, here's what I would do. If I was the president of the company, if I was the president of the country, whatever. This is a flawed premise, and it's something I've been pondering lately because I had a couple of instances come up in our organization over the last couple of weeks where it seemed to me at least that the individuals involved were suggesting if they had more authority, they would be more effective. And that's what I mean when I talk to you about it being a flawed premise. That's just not how it works. There is this thought that with authority comes influence. And I've said before that it is actually the lowest form of influence to pull rank. In other words, to use your authority, to use your power as the boss to try to influence people is not very effective. It's the lowest form of effectiveness, and it'll have the least amount of staying power. It'll be a fleeting change that you're able to make, if any at all. Instead, the most effective is when you sell your vision, you use your power of persuasion and get others to buy in to what it is that you're trying to do. And so this idea that if you were in charge, you could be more effective is flawed thinking. So today what I'm trying to do is address this to those entrepreneurs, those managers who are listening, who may have someone in their organization who is implying that or suggesting it in some way, maybe even outwardly asking for a promotion and saying they would be able to be much more effective in helping you accomplish your vision and the various objectives that you're hoping that they'll be able to accomplish if only you give them more power, more authority. The other people I'm talking to is those within any organization. Maybe you have aspirations to be in management. Maybe you have felt that way before, or you're feeling that way now. Maybe it's your boss who shared this video with you because you've discussed with him or she has noticed that you are displaying sort of that notion, that attitude that with more authority you could be more effective, and that person cares enough about you to want to share this concept with you and give you advice of how you can better proceed. I had at least two people in my organizations. I think this is pretty universal. This happens. All of us at one time or another have the misguided notion that we just need a little more authority. If we had more power, we could change things for the better. And you see this in all walks of life, from politics and certainly within business and even in families. You know, you probably remember as a kid that if you were the parent, here's the rules you'd put in place and everything. And sometimes that is due to a lack of wisdom, a lack of understanding and seeing the complete picture. And it may be a lack of maturity, and there's various reasons for this. But I think of two particular managers that I had over the years who had this concept, and one of them was very vocal with me, very insistent that if I just made him the director of sales, you wouldn't believe what I would do for you, Michael. He used to say this continuously, and my response was always, why don't you just do it, and then when I see it, I'll make you the director of sales. And the notion comes back, of course, or the retort would be, well, I can't do those things because I need the authority. I had another manager, and he had a slightly different spin on it. His thing was he was very critical of the management team when he wasn't in management. And now he had a very illustrious career of management prior to joining me, and so he had some insights into what being an effective manager may include and was very critical of various things within the organization. And I used to say it's really easy to sit back and be a critic. What makes it difficult, what makes an effective manager, is somebody who can actually identify those things that are worthy of criticism and actually affect change, can actually implement improvement. And so I sort of, with this guy, was like a case of careful what you wish for, because I promoted him to management and he was not particularly effective in bringing about the changes that he used to criticize. Now, I'm not saying this to be unfair to either of those individuals. They were both good guys, and this is, in fact, what is a challenge for all people in management, is that the authority alone, the power, the fact that you're the boss, the ranking individual in an organization is not what is going to affect change. It is not what's going to bring about improvement in the organization. So for those of you who are running a business and has someone like this in the organization, or if you yourself are in an organization where you're aspiring to get ahead, to make improvements, and you think you need the authority, what would my advice be? Here's my advice. Do the very best job you can do with what you've got right now. So I want you to, let's say you're in an organization and you want to, be a leader. Then act like a leader. Act like a leader without having the official title, without having the official authority to do anything. Go ahead and try to implement the change. But instead of using authority to bring others along with you, try to influence them. Use your power of persuasion. Talk to people. Remember that people act in their own self-interests. And so when you know that, you can be very influential by understanding that people are asking, what's in it for me? So tell people what's in it for them, to go along with you on your ride, to communicate your vision to people in a way that they see, oh, there's a win for me to cooperate with this. And all of a sudden people start to join you. From the earliest days of my employment, I didn't really see the idea of doing a job and not doing it well. You always want to try to do a job as well as possible. If for no other reason than it'll keep you busy, the time will go by faster, there's educational benefits, there's lots of reasons actually. And I'm not sure, I kind of thought everybody felt that way. But I remember the general manager of my very first job, this particular restaurant that I worked at, my mom came to pick me up. I was 14 or 15 years old, and I was in the back, and the general manager had an opportunity to speak to my mom and told her, wow, he's a really good employee. He's always saying, I can do it, yes, I have to ask. I don't have to ask twice. Anytime I ask, is anyone willing to do this? He steps forward and agrees. And my mom shared that with me, that the general manager had said that, and I was thinking to myself, well, that's absolutely, it was very impactful on me, because I was thinking to myself, that's exactly how I act at the business, but doesn't everyone act that way? Why wouldn't you? I mean, not only is she the boss, it wasn't that my boss asked me to do something, it was like, here's an opportunity to do something, to be engaged in the business and to affect change, to help the business drive forward and take an interest in it. So I had a lot of ability to do things in that particular organization, in that restaurant. I could do a lot of things that were outside of my job. There was some managers that would ask me to do various things that was in fact usually incumbent upon them to do. And I'm not talking about decision making, I'm talking about little tasks. But I was the one who learned how to do it, and maybe they didn't like to do it, so they relied on me to do it. And there were some things in the organization I was one of the very few that knew how to do. And so I became very valuable to that organization. And this isn't about me boasting or bragging. It's just a lesson I learned very early on in business. And that is, try to be as valuable as possible. People take note. And you may be in an organization where it feels to you that nobody notices. Still do it. Do it. It is for your own benefit. Maybe someone outside of your organization will eventually take note, and that happens all the time. There might be somebody you're working with who isn't in a power to promote you or really give you a raise or anything like that you might be hopeful for, and that person goes on somewhere else and then recommends you to another organization. That happens, and you get all of a sudden recruited. You get this phone call from somebody who's like, hey, I heard all about you. I'd really love to meet you. We have a spot in our organization. Just take this at face value, that if you work really hard and you do a good job, then people will notice, and eventually you will realize the benefits of it, the fruits of your labor. So what I'm advising you to do, if you want to get ahead in any organization, in life in general is act like you own the place. Now, I don't mean that in a cocky, arrogant way. You know, he walks around here like he owns the place kind of thing. What I mean to say is act like you are the boss, like the money that is being spent in the organization, any decision you're making, you handle expense control, all those kind of things like the boss would. You behave as if the business was yours. You take that kind of care and concern, and you put in that kind of passion. If you act like the entrepreneur, if you act like the owner of the business, and you are empathic to his various needs, it will really go a long way in helping you to advance your career. And again, so if you are not this particular individual, but you have someone like that in your organization who you would like to see succeed, then share this video with that person. Share this concept with that person and say to them, could you do me the favor of acting like you own the place? Act like you are already the manager. Act like you have a piece of the action, so to speak, and watch what happens. I mentioned in another video that I had an employer who reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to become a business partner, and I never once mentioned to that person. In fact, when I did become business partners with another guy later, the same thing occurred. He had mentioned to two of us in a particular meeting that he envisioned a future where we would be partners. I had never brought it up one time before that. The other guy said, well, that's what I want. And we both did become partners in that business. The idea is always act like you are an owner. And when you behave in that way and you really care about the business, people take notice and it will have the desired effect. Now, you managers who may have someone in your organization that you're thinking of when you're listening to this, remember, you now have to respond. You don't want to be that one oblivious manager, entrepreneur, business owner who has a really talented individual in his organization and you are ignoring that and you are taking for granted that that person, just because they're getting a paycheck, is going to work really hard all the time. If you have an outstanding individual, somebody who's shining, who is really treating the business like it's his, then celebrate that success. Watch our video on celebrating success. Go out of your way, reward that with more responsibility, and then maybe set some time aside with human resources with that individual and discuss what is his hope for the future. Where does she want to be in 5 years? And how can you help that person? Sometimes this is an unhappy reality of business. That person is going to need to advance far beyond what your organization may be able to offer them. Maybe they have greater aspirations. They want to do something greater. I'm thinking of another individual who one time came to me and I asked him if he wanted to be in management. And he said, no, not at all. I want to be an owner of my own business. And I said to him, okay, well, when that happens, I want you to reach back out to me and tell me that. And he did do that. And many years later, shout out to SL, you know who you are. He contacted me and said, I'm running a successful business. And I remember getting the call and thinking that he was saying it to me in such a way that was almost like in your face. Nice guy. But I remember that he and I went away from that original meeting when I told him that, yeah, please call me when you have your own business. He thought I was throwing down the gauntlet like a challenge. I was thinking I was being sincere, that this would be holding his feet to the fire. I guess I was, in a sense, throwing down the gauntlet, a challenge. I was telling him, yeah, reach out to me, and he's done that. Anyway, going back to your organization, there may be somebody in your organization, like the guy I just described, who was an outstanding person who I approached and said, would you consider a career in management? Is that where you'd want to go? Can I help to mentor you in that direction? And he corrected me and said, no, very candidly and honestly. He said, no, that's not my aspiration. I want to grow to greater heights and own my own business. You should still be helping those people. Help them find their way. This is good for both you as the boss, as the owner of the business, to help your people grow in any way that you can. It will be helpful for you because maybe later you'll have another person that you can mentor that does want to be part of your succession plan, who does want to help you grow the place, and maybe you can give that person interest in your business or something like that. And regardless if you are, say, the individual watching this video who is in the position where you would like to grow into business ownership of your own or management, the advice is the same. Act like you were already there. Do everything in your power and try to learn as much as possible. Use your opportunity as an employee as an education. You're being paid to be educated. In the example I gave when I was 14 or 15 years old, they were paying me every day. And at the same time, they were training me all sorts of new skills. It was great. And that basically was the attitude I had with every job. If you're going to have a job, if you're going to take a job, do it well, do it right, and look at all the things you can learn. And I used every opportunity, every employment opportunity as sort of a stepping stone to the next part of my career. I wasn't, always moving forward. Sometimes I went backwards. My trajectory wasn't straight up. I had some challenges and problems, but I learned from everything, and I could later employ that information and that knowledge that I gained even with people. I had some bosses that I've referenced in other videos that weren't particularly inspirational, and their moral compasses may have been broken, but I still learned from them. I learned from the whole experience. And so this whole notion of, if I was king for a day, or if I was president, or if I had the power, here's what I would do. This is flawed logic, and I wanted to share that concept with you from two perspectives. Either you as a manager who has someone in your organization who may benefit from listening to this video and understanding a better way for them to get ahead, or if you are that individual, there is a better way to get ahead, and it is to act like you are an owner already. Do everything in your power to help the business succeed. Do the best you can with what you have. Now, Stephen Covey even refers to this when he talks about staying within your circle of influence, not worried about your circle of concern, not trying to act outside of your circle of influence to try to impact those things which may be of concern to you, over which you have no control. And what he says is the more time you spend effectively managing those things within your influence, your circle of influence will grow. And sometimes it grows to a larger scale than your circle of concern. That's a rare thing, but it grows more and more to take over some things that were previously in your circle of concern but fell outside of your control. They now fall within your control. And you can understand just an example of a promotion. Somebody who took my advice that I talked about this whole video and worked really hard, all of a sudden they get promoted. They get promoted by focusing on those things within their control. They get noticed, they get promoted. Now their circle of concern, their circle of influence grows, and they have a greater influence over things that were previously outside of their control. So this is the concept. This is the idea that you want to focus on those things over which you have control. Put all of your effort into those things. Don't worry about, that's not in my job description. I don't get paid for that. You've got to, the people who get ahead in life really don't focus too much on that. It's okay once in a while to address that if it's, really a glaring situation where there's a lack of alignment of interest between the organization, between your boss, his objectives and yours. It's okay to address that, but I'm saying don't have this attitude of that's not my job, that's not in my job description, and I don't get paid for that, so I'm not going to do that. Many of the things that I'm alluding to over the years that I did fell outside the realm of my responsibility, and yet I did them. And I learned so much from them, and I took those things on, and they became eventually my responsibility. And it was its own reward, but it will pay off in greater dividends. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it today. I'm curious if you've had this sort of experience in your employment. Do you have somebody working for you right now that would really benefit from learning from this idea? Leave some comments that we can all learn from, because we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.